Hi everyone, here we are again for Ways of the World, a brief global history with sources. As we continue our study of pastoral peoples on the global stage, we're going to take a look at the Mongol Empire as a Eurasian network today. All right, so let's start with toward a world economy. So the Mongols produced little for distant markers. They were not heavily active traders, but they promoted international commerce as a source of tax revenue, and they provided financial backing to caravans. They had a standardized weights and measures. Tax breaks were given to merchants and made it relatively safe and secure to travel across Central Asia. And the Mongol trading circuit was central to larger Afro-Eurasian commercial networks. Diplomacy on a Eurasian scale. So Mongol encroachment into Eastern Europe led both the Pope and European rulers to dispatch diplomatic missions to the Mongols. It had no diplomatic or religious consequences, but brought back valuable information about the East. And Persian and Chinese courts developed close relationships as a result. All right, trade and disease in the 14th century. So the Mongol Empire played a major role in the commercial integration of the Eurasian world, as well as the spread of the plague across vast areas. So which circuits of trade played the greatest role in the spread of the plague? This map demonstrates that the following trade circuits played the greatest role in the spread of the plague: Central Asia, the Black Sea and Mediterranean, northern Italy and France, and the Baltic Sea. So what does the map suggest about the regions, temperate, tropical, along the equator, and subarctic, in which the plague spread most widely? This map demonstrates that the plague spread most widely in temperate zone and to a lesser extent in subarctic regions. Cultural exchange in the Mongol realm. So thousands of craftsmen and educated people were forcibly relocated by the Mongols. And the Mongol religious tolerance and support of merchants drew foreigners, and the Mongol capital of Karakorum was a cosmopolitan center. There's a lively exchange of ideas and techniques within the Mongol realm. We see the exchange and blending of religious ideas, a westward flow of Chinese technology and art, specifically painting, printing, gunpowder weapons, compass navigation, high-temperature furnaces, and even medical techniques. There's also Muslim astronomy that spread to China and a circulation of plants and crops, and Europe benefited particularly from this new contact with Asia. All right, the plague. So this illustration depicts a European doctor visiting a patient with the plague. Notice that the doctor and others around the bedside cover their noses to prevent infection. During the Black Death, doctors were often criticized for refusing to treat dying patients as they feared their own lives. So let's think about some of the social effects of the plague in Western Europe. There's the loss of population due to the plague that created labor shortages that provoked sharp conflict between scarce workers and the rich, which in turn undermined the practice of serfdom in Europe. Labor shortages also fostered a greater interest in technological innovation in Europe and created more employment opportunities for women. The plague contributed to the downfall of the Mongol Empire. And the plague caused significant disruption of trade routes to the east, and this trade disruption, along with the desire to avoid Muslim intermediaries, provided an incentive for Europeans to take to sea in their continuing efforts to reach the riches of Asia. All right, the plague, an Afro-Eurasian pandemic. All right, the plague, or Black Death, spread across the trade routes of the Mongol Empire in the early 14th century, probably originating in China and carried by rodents and transmitted by fleas to humans. And the plague broke out in northeastern China in approximately 1331, and it reached the Middle East and Europe by 1347. In 1409, it reached East Africa, and there's a massive death toll. At least half of Europe's population and up to 90% perished in 1348 to 1350, perhaps a third of the population in the Middle East. And there are periodic returns of the plague for centuries. Now, India and sub-Saharan Africa were much less affected. The Black Death changed European society in the long term. Labor shortages undermined the practice of serfdom, as discussed earlier. and it may have fostered greater technological innovation, and for a time created more employment opportunities for women. Now, the plague was a primary reason for the breakdown of the Mongol Empire in the 14th to 15th centuries, and with population contraction and the volume of trade actually reduced. Now, by 1350, the Mongol Empire was in complete disarray, and within a century, the Mongols had lost control of China, Persia, and Russia. And the Central Asian trade route largely was closed. There's also a disruption of land routes to the east that encouraged Europeans to seek trade routes by sea. And the European naval technology gave them an advantage. And similarity of 16th century Europeans to Mongols, people on the periphery who were economically less developed and who forcibly plundered wealthier civilizations. All right, Kublai Khan on a hunt. So I've got a series of 3 images that focus on Kublai Khan, and we're going to discuss these each individually. So this is the first, showing Kublai Khan on a Mongol hunt, accompanied by his wife and various attendants. And it was painted by a Chinese artist under a commission from Kublai Khan himself. It portrays him dressed in a traditional red imperial robe and white lambskin coat. So what marks this as a hunting scene? Well, the horsemen do not wear armor, nor are they in any military formation. So what's the purpose of the painting? This painting may be designed to situate Kublai Khan within the pastoral tradition of his ancestors. And how does this illustrate pastoral values? Well, by depicting people hunting on horseback rather than farming or some other quote-unquote settled social activity, this painting extols pastoral values. All right, Marco Polo and Kublai Khan. So this second image here derives from a European artist who provided illustrations for Marco Polo's book of the Marvels of the World, in which he describes his close to 20 years in Mongol ruled China. It shows Marco Polo and his father Nikolai presenting letters and gifts from the Pope to Kublai Khan upon their arrival in the early 1270s. So what relationship between the Polos and the Mongol ruler is suggested in the image? What do the postures of the Khan and his attendants imply about how the Pope's gifts were received? Well, this image depicts the Polos supplicating themselves to deliver the Bible and the cross to their social superior. And the Khan and his attendants' posture suggests that the Pope's gifts were accepted with great interest. What is the point of view of the artist, and how might this background have influenced the way he depicted Kublai Khan? Well, the artist is a European who never met the Khan or his attendants. As such, he depicts them as fair-skinned Europeans who dress in European style. He also portrayed the Khan as willingly accepting Christian gifts, in line with the author's likely desire to see his faith spread. All right, and the third image here of Kublai Khan derives from India, which the Mongols attacked but never conquered. Over the centuries, a number of Turkic or Mongol groups invaded India, and the most successful of which were the Mughals, who claimed descent from the Mongols and Genghis Khan. During the 16th century, these Turkic warriors constructed the Mughal Empire over much of India, which boasted a magnificent court and a sophisticated Islamic Persian culture. It was from artists at that court that this painting emerged, showing Kublai Khan in a black robe at the top of the image, in council with his courtiers and officials. So what is the historical situation of the painting? And remember, historical situation is context. Well, the painting was created in the context of an empire falsely claiming descent from the Mongols, depicted here in the center. Why might an artist from the Mughal Empire have wanted to portray Kublai Khan in this particular way? Well, the Mughals sought to justify their descent from the Mongols. The Mughals sought to justify their descent from the Mongols and Kublai Khan. Part of that symbolic justification was depicting the Khan as an Indian in Indian dress. So let's analyze the point of view of the 3 artists. How do these points of view impact the ways in which Kublai Khan is portrayed? Because he's portrayed in 3 very different ways. Each of the artists seek to put the Mongol rulers within the context of the artist's society and thus use them as a tool to correlate their societies with that of the Mongols. And that concludes our study of the Mongol Empire as a Eurasian network. I will see you guys again for societies and culture as we begin chapter 12.